Well, there's a little confusion about which verse for this morning. Looks like on the board is text 20, but I was told I should start with 17. So we'll chant with the verse that's on the board. Text 20. Okay. Tam apratatim bhagavan pradyumno gadaya gadam apashya shatrave krudhaha prahinot swagadam nripa tam apatatim apatantim bhagavan pradyumno gadaya gadam apashya shatrave krudhaha prahinot swagadam nripa. Tam apatantim abhagavan pradyumno gadaya gadam apashya shatrave krudhaha prahinot swagadam nripa. Tam apatantim bhagavan pradyumno gadaya gadam apashya shatrave krudhaha prahinot swagadam nripa. Tam apatantim bhagavan pradyumno gadaya gadam apashya shatrave krudham prahinot swagadam nripa. Tam apatatim bhagavan pradyumno gadaya gadam apashya shatrave krudhaha prahinot swagadam nripa. Tam apatantim bhagavan pradyumno gadaya gadam apashya shatrave krudhaha prahinot swagadam nripa. Tam apatantim bhagavan pradyumno gadaya gadam apashya shatrave krudhaha prahinot swagadam. So I think I'm going to go back to 17 because I was told that's where we start, and we'll read 20 along the way up to 22. I think it's important to understand what's going on, to read at least as far back as text 16. Shukadeva Goswami continued speaking thus: Mayavati gave to the great soul Pradyumna the mystic knowledge called Maya, which vanquishes all other deluding spells. Text 17. Pradyumna approached Shambhara and called him to battle, hurling intolerable insults at him, to foment a conflict. 18. Offended by these harsh words, Shambhara became as agitated as a kicked snake. He came out, club in hand, his eyes red with rage. Shambhara whirled his club swiftly about and then hurled it at the wise Pradyumna, producing a sound as sharp as a thunder crack. 20, this morning's verse. As Shambhara's club came flying toward him, Lord Pradyumna knocked it away with his own. Then, O king, Pradyumna angrily threw his club at the enemy. Text 21. Resorting to the black magic of the Daityas taught to him by Maya Danava, Shambhara suddenly appeared in the sky and released a downpour of weapons upon Krishna's son. And 22. Harassed by the rain of the weapons, Lord Rokminya, the greatly powerful warrior, made use of the mystic science called Maha-Maya, which was created from the mode of goodness and which could defeat all other mystic power. I think it's good to go back to the starting point of all of this. The starting point of all of this has to do with a transcendental understanding. It takes a little bit of acknowledging that the Absolute Truth has the capacity to expand in different ways. There's Swangsa and there's Angsa, Vibhinangsa. So it's not uncommon, it happens, that personalities from the spiritual realm expand themselves into this material realm in different ways, including devas. And so the case in point, there's other examples I'll mention. The case in point is Cupid, the demigod Cupid, and his consort Rati. There, Cupid, is an expansion of the original Cupid. The original Cupid in the spiritual realm is Pradyumna. And Pradyumna's expansion in the heavenly realm is Cupid. Here's another example. It's not prominent, but it's scriptural. Vasudeva and Devaki, they're eternally associates of Krishna in the spiritual world, in the spiritual realm of Dwarka. They, Vasudeva and Devaki, have their expansions in the heavenly realm. The name of their expansions in the heavenly realm is, who knows the names of their expansions in the heavenly realm? Those expansions in the heavenly realm underwent austerities for a long, long time, desiring to become the mother and father of the personality of Godhead. They were given that benediction to become the mother and father, and thus they appeared within the bodies of Vasudeva and Yasoda and Nanda, and they became the mother and father. The names? They've escaped me right now. Maybe in the course of speaking they'll come back again. But, etc. The background point is forms of the Lord in the spiritual world, and Pradumna is one of those forms of the Lord in the spiritual world, and his direct expansions in the spiritual world. They can have their partial expansions in the material realm. And so it was with Cupid. And Cupid made a big boo-boo. He wanted to test out his power against Lord Shiva. So what did Lord Shiva do? He incinerated the body of Cupid, leaving his wife, his consort, without a husband. And so the entity representing the expansion of Cupid in the spiritual realm, namely Pradumna, entered into the body of Pradumna. And then, when Pradumna of the spiritual world became the firstborn son of Krishna and Rukmini, 10 days after the birth of Pradumna, or less than 10 days, a little infant, Shambhara, a demon, somehow came up with the idea that this child is his enemy, and so he went into the maternity room, kidnapped the child, and threw the child in the ocean, or river, body of water. Some fishermen caught the fish in a net. The fish, big fish, with the personality of Godhead, Krishna's son, in the belly of this big fish, was then given to Shambhara. When the cooks of Shambhara opened the fish to cook the fish, they saw a small child in the belly of the fish. And then Shambhara decided, let me keep the child. So he gave the child in the care of his assistant. So then comes his assistant. The assistant, Mayavati, was given the name Mayavati by the following arrangement. After Rati, who was the consort of Cupid, lost her husband, she prayed to Lord Shiva that he could arrange for her husband to get another body. And around the same time, Shambhara came, who had done great austerities, and Lord Shiva honored Shambhara's request first. What would you like? What benediction would you like? And he looked at Rati and said, I want her. And Lord Shiva said, so be it. And Rati freaked out because she has her husband, Cupid. Lord Shiva pulled her to the side and said, don't worry. You accept Shambhara as a marriage partner, but very soon your desire will be fulfilled. You will see. It was a post-dated check, but she trusted the word of Lord Shiva, and her name was changed from Rati to Mayavati. Now Mayavati is still a demigoddess. She has demigoddess powers. And as time passed, when this child was entrusted to her to look after by Shambhara, Narada Muni magically appeared privately to her and said, this is your husband. This small child is your husband, and you will be restored in your relationship with him as husband in the course of time. So from that, hearing from Narada, who she trusted, as she heard from Lord Shiva, who she trusted, that her desire would be fulfilled after some time. So she started looking after this small child. And the small child became mature very quickly. This is said about Krishna also. His maturing periods of time came about very quickly. So Pradyumna matured very quickly. And as Pradyumna matured quickly, her affection, knowing that this child was her husband, the mood changed from being the mother looking after a child to a wife looking at her beloved. And she started raising her eyebrows and moving her gestures in such a way that Pradyumna understood she had a different idea than mother. So he said to her, Pradyumna said to her, my dear mother, you're not behaving like a mother anymore. This is not right. And then Mayavati disclosed what Narada disclosed. Actually, you're my husband. And doesn't say, did she tell the A to Z of how that was, but you're my husband. And this Shambhara should be destroyed because he's the one that threw you in the river, so then you became caught in the body of a fish and so forth and so on. So you should finish him. And the verse 16 that we read, she, Mayavati, gave Mahamaya Shakti. Well, now she's a demigoddess, so she gave a demigoddess Shakti, or a material Shakti. And Pradyumna, he is a Vishnu Tattva personality, so he doesn't need a material potency, but it's a Leela. She wanted to invest her husband in something, so he could defeat Shambhara. Now it's good to know, just stepping back about 10 steps. It's said several places, each of the sons of Krishna were as powerful as Krishna. Not only the Vishnu Tattva personality. So how can a Vishnu Tattva personality, Pradyumna, be treated like this by Shambhara? It's a Leela. It was sanctioned by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Parama Purusha. In understanding the pastimes of the Lord, it's absolutely essential. I mean, one can hear them and they're attractive, but to understand them preliminarily, it's essential to have Sambandha Gyan. And 2 evenings ago, one young fellow, maybe 10 years old, asked, who is God? So I wanted to give a 10-year-old perspective on 10 years old person's perspective. And the reply I gave was, he's Parama Purusha, or he's Param Atma, the Supreme, Param Satyam. Yeah, there we go. He's the Supreme Controller, Para Isha. So we're all controllers of something. I mean, subordinate controllers, but controllers. And the subordinate controllers are controlled by Para Isha. So God is the supreme controller of all controllers, including Pradyumna, Sankarshan, and Aniruddha. They act for the pleasure of the supreme controller, Ishvara, Parama, Krishna, So Krishna is in that position. The pastime of Pradumna being born and then kidnapped. How can Supreme Lord be kidnapped? Swallowed by a fish? Yikes. And then be benedicted by the goddess of the heavenly realm with a deva potency, which he then used. So it's mentioned in this final verse, 22. When Shambhara threw his club and Pradumna stopped his club with his club and then threw his club, then Maya Danava, mystic powers, again it's material, but Maya Danava has powers. Maya Danava's mystic powers taught him how to fly in the sky and then shower down mystic weapons. But this power that Mahamaya was given to him was sufficient to counteract all of Maya Danava's or Shambhara's potencies. What's going on here? It's like Star Wars or something, or I don't even know what Star Wars is about, but it's showing a pastime where powers of the mode of goodness are stronger than powers of the mode of ignorance. What to speak of when those powers in goodness are wielded by a Vishnu Tattva personality. So he doesn't need powers of goodness. He's of transcendence. He has his own powers. And again, it is said in many places that the sons of Krishna were as powerful as Krishna, meaning not the absolute sense, but they have their Vishnu Tattva forms, or empowered like that. So they don't need anybody's help. But if there's some help, then it's a pastime. So if one doesn't understand the position of all of this, then the stories are fanciful in mythology. And if one understands the Krishna Tattva, then it's quite amazing. It's astonishing. And even the narrator, from time to time, Shukadeva Goswami, who's one of our 12 Mahajans, he also pauses when narrating something out of astonishment. And that astonishment that he feels is not that he becomes literally bewildered like a conditioned soul. He's just astonished or amazed at the range and the extent and the display of Krishna's Leela Shakti and his other Shaktis that are at work in his Leelas. It's extraordinary. It is extraordinary and astonishing. It took me some time going through this pastime to sort it all out. Because coming up is Mayavati discloses her identity to Pradumna, she already did, and after he finishes Shambhara, then Mayavati and Pradumna go zooming off into the sky together and come in for a landing in Dwarka. And Krishna's son Pradumna, who Krishna hasn't seen since the 10th day or before the 10th day after his birth, is now showing up in Dwarka. Haribol, I'm your son, and here's my wife. Pretty astonishing. Of course, Krishna is omniscient, and while he may appear to be astonished by something or another, that's also a function of his Leela Shakti giving happiness to Krishna. Because happiness has variety. Variety is the mother of enjoyment, and astonishment is one of the happinesses. Transcendental happiness. Here's my son. Here's my son. Like when Devaki had her 6 sons returned by Krishna. She was very happy. Her 6 sons who she didn't get to see beyond, the evening that they were born. Now they are little boys coming before their mother. They're very happy. She's very happy. And, so the transcendental events lead to transcendental emotion. And the transcendental emotion of a battle is not like a worldly, it may look like a worldly battle scene. And even using his Maya potency may look like something that's in the heavenly realm, but it's not. It's just a pastime, a transcendental pastime. Finishing Shambhara, the demon. So Krishna sometimes arranges for the demons for whom he appeared in this world to be killed. I mean, what a demon. He kidnapped Pradyumna, Krishna's first son. What a demon. He had a kingdom, he had followers, he had mystic powers, he wasn't an ordinary bad person, he was a mystical person. He was destroyed by Pradyumna in a very attractive way. Krishna's sons, in addition to Pradyumna, Krishna's sons enjoyed battle because they're in the Leela, at least, of Kshatriyas. For example, when Samba was defeated by Duryodhana's army, and how can someone who is as powerful as Krishna or Vishnu Tattva form be captured? Krishna's Leela. So that's kind of like a nice whitewash stroke, someone might say. Everything is just Krishna's Leela or Leela Shakti, and you just dismiss everything, any common sense, anything, by the whitewash. But it's not a whitewash, it's Krishna's enjoyment. Krishna enjoys these things. So that Balaram could perform his pastime of doing what Balaram did to confirm the marriage. And show his devoted student, Duryodhana, a lesson. Don't mess with Balaram. Don't mess with the Yadu dynasty. But, as a fool, as foolish as fools can be, he still didn't learn his lesson. He remained inimical, specifically inimical to Krishna. And his inimicalness towards the Pandavas was certainly connected to their affection for Krishna, their very, very special relationship with Krishna. So we say it the other way. If you have disdain for those who are dear to Krishna, it's disdain for Krishna. It's taken by Krishna that way, and it is. So see it the other way. When there's a strong affection and loving service mood towards one who is dear to Krishna, one becomes dear to Krishna from Krishna's side. and from the side of the one who's serving one who's dear to Krishna. From that person's side, Krishna becomes dear. One may not have the dislike serving our founder Acharya. That's what ISKCON is. And one may not have a clear idea of Krishna and affection for Krishna. But by having some dedication to service to our founder Acharya and other Acharyas following our founder Acharya, then affection for Krishna grows. Purification comes. And at the root of it is affection for Krishna. That's our process. Just like here, reading a chapter from Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto. Affection for Krishna can arise. And appreciating the great person. Now, there's not abundant commentary here. There's nothing in the BBT commentary. There is modest amount of commentary from our acharyas. But through the expertise of Vyasadeva to compile all this under the order of Narada, we're getting an opportunity to become attached to how wonderful is Krishna and how wonderful are Krishna's expansions. They're performing extraordinary activities. Who can understand except through the medium of bhakti? And just the hearing itself, even we may not understand A to Z, the flow of events and how they all happened and all of that, the affection, appreciation, the amazement at Krishna and Krishna's Pradumna in this case, very wonderful. And when he returns to Dwarka, it's also very wonderful. And on top of it, one of the demons that Krishna appeared in this world to kill is killed. Shambhara. Not a prominent person like some of the other demons that were killed, but nonetheless, one of the persons who should have been killed, and he was killed in a very intriguing way. Okay. 8:10. Let's see if there's some discussion.
Krishna. There's a comment and a question. The last point you raised, that how Krishna's pastimes are so intriguing.
How Krishna did what?
Krishna's pastimes are so intriguing. I was reading the pastime of Kalyavana yesterday. Krishna was just walking in the middle of the soldiers, and Kalyavana was just watching what Krishna is doing. Why he's not even having any ammunition or arms with him to fight. So I was just remembering that pastime when you told that how Krishna's pastime are so intriguing. My question is that, of course, you gave the answer that everything is Leela Shakti of Krishna.
Before who entered?
My question...
some of the words you speak are clear, and the ones that are not clear, I'm going to ask you to repeat so that they're clear. So, when Krishna entered, then what?
When Krishna entered, Kalyavana came to attack Krishna.
The Kaliya lake?
Kalyavana. Kalyavana? The Kalyavana, the Muchakunda's pastime.
The Mushakunda's pastime.
The Kalyavana, the king, he came to fight Krishna.
Kalyavana.
Kalyavana.
Okay.
And Krishna was just walking, and Kalyavana was just watching that why Krishna is walking in this way. That was a very intriguing pastime, that Krishna is doing something very out of blue. He's just walking without any weapons. So I was just comparing what you're saying right now, how Krishna's pastimes are intriguing.
They're charming.
They're charming. Well, the question is that, of course you gave the answer that everything is Krishna's Leela Shakti, so there's nothing to be questioned now, but how it is possible that Pradyumna, who is a Vishnu Tattva, has been burned to ashes by Lord Shiva.
Pradyumna was not burned by Lord Shiva.
The Cupid was burned. Okay. It was expansion of Pradyumna.
With the material body. Pradyumna doesn't have a material body.
Okay.
Cupid had a material body. Pradyumna's expansion in the heavenly realm had a material body, which was destroyed.
That makes sense. So all this expansion of Pradyumna as a Cupid in this material realm is also expansion of Pradyumna, the Cupid in the material world?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, if we go to Harvard or Princeton or Stanford and say, hey, this is the pasam of Krishna, and Sukadeva Goswami become astonished, he become completely...
They'll dismiss it, most likely. I mean, it depends on this particular scholar. But, many will just dismiss it. Mythology.
But there is no question of dismissing it because...
No question of?
Dismissing it because when you practice it, I don't know the experience.
There's no question of what's the word?
You told me they will dismiss it. They will dismiss the fact that this is true. It could be possible.
There's no question of dismissing it, you're saying?
Yeah, because I don't have experience.
Well, scholars feel they have the right to dismiss things.
Sure, and that's true. Maybe I don't have experience, but we can say this guy, Sukadeva Goswami, was completely in its trance when he was reading his pastimes. So let's try it. You follow the procedure, what we are doing.
Well, they have many different ways. The dance is very convoluted. They say, for example, the whole of the Bhagavatam is a modern creation. Some say that some portions of the Bhagavatam are interpolated, which means they're just superimposed upon something else. So they're not given weight. They're dismissed in that way. They have different. Scholars are clever.
Maharaj, I understand. But the scholars base their science on hypothesis.
They base their findings on?
They base the science on the hypothesis. They go to the lab, they do the research work, and they get the result, or they may not get result. So if we say that, hey, we have a lab, Temple, you come to a lab, follow our research work, do what we are doing. If it doesn't work in 7 days, we can prove that we are wrong.
Look, you're a Vaishnav, and your reasoning as a Vaishnava is convincing to you. Scholars have their other frame of reference that's not yours. Something was just circulated recently. This is a for example. For example, someone in one of these, I don't know which one, prestigious universities, got his PhD on the thesis. His PhD thesis, which means you have to not only write it, but defend it by other scholars. He got his PhD for the thesis that the Vedas are a modern creation, based upon something. They're not to be given authority. Sanskrit scholar, you got a PhD on the basis that the Vedas are not authentic. And he got, the reviewers of his thesis from this Puffy Wuffy University gave him a PhD, and I'm not. I'll forward that to you so you can, if you like. It's I heard about it from Hari Parshad, because I didn't hear about it because I don't mix with Puffy Wuffies, but he heard it and, presented something of a refutation. But so my response to what you're saying is, apparently what you're saying is, the Bhagavatam is authoritative, Sukadeva Goswami is a perfected soul. How can they question it? You've got your value structure. They have theirs.
I'm not saying that Sukadeva Goswami is the authority and they have to follow it. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that we have a hypothesis
They have a what?
This hypothesis.
They have a hypothesis.
We have this research work in hand. Let's go to the lab. Let's do the research work. Sukdev Goswami is a completely wrong person. We don't follow him. But we want to prove that you are right, guys. So let's go in and follow the procedure. If it doesn't work, attending morning program, chanting 16 round, revolving around Tulsi plant, attending Bhagavatam. If it doesn't work, then we'll follow you. But let's at least come to the common page. Let's go and work in the lab.
If you were to say that to a professor, let's say even a favorable professor, what to speak of all the others that are not, they'll not, my sense is they're not going to say, oh, you have a compelling argument here. They're not going to say that. Scholarship is scholarship. And your criterion for scholarship is the laboratory. If you follow sadhana, and it brings a result, okay, brings you a certain result, and you go to that destination. We have a different sadhana, and our sadhana takes us to a different destination. So you want to say, my sadhana is the sadhana that's the litmus test sadhana. And I'm sorry, I'm a scholar and I don't do sadhana. I like what you have to say. I don't, the conclusions, they're fine. I'm a very liberal, broad-minded scholar. They're not going to buy your methodology.
You're right. So what's the reason that when you go to India, the proportion of brahmachari are really high in temple? And when we come to West, it's very rare to see a saffron-colored brahmachari, one in a temple.
Ask the brahmachari. Ask the potential brahmacharis. Also, for your just this morning, I was hearing Prabhupada say that in India, it's very difficult to have brahmacharis. No, during his time, it was very difficult. It was very difficult because mother and father want to produce a son that is productive in the worldly sense, and he has to have his career, education and career, and they hold on to him. And there's affection between the family members, more so in the West, and Prabhupada was saying this morning in lecture, that one of the opulences of the West is renunciation. He said, I like hippies. Because there's opulence of renunciation. Makes it, all I have to do is give them transcendental teachings. And then they're ready. That was Prabhupada this morning. And during his period of time, that's the case. And times have changed. From Prabhupada's time. There's, let's say, the kind of many devotees. There's stories of how devotees became devotees like that. Kosharupa, Badahari's wife, we were having a breakfast together at a japa retreat, and she was describing how her husband became a devotee. It was like that. His career was happening. He came back from a tour. He landed in Los Angeles. Somebody gave him a Bhagavad Gita in the airport. He then, next day, went to the temple. The next day, he moved into the temple, shaved up. Now, times have changed. So why is it so in India today that there's less of what Prabhupada is describing during his time and more of a willingness than during his time to take the teachings and go against the norm of what parents, generally speaking, maybe the mood of the parents has also changed, but it's still going against that norm because it's still prevalent. So why? Times have changed, and therefore the approach needs to change, and become a scientist and go to the laboratory and perform the experiment of how you can produce a brahmachari in today's laboratory. And there are some that are doing that, but it's not the same as before. It's not the same. And it's not just we don't have the right formula, it's the times have changed and the attachments have become different. Now, this isn't the time and the place for having a discussion on what's the best way to produce brahmacharis in North America and the West these days. This isn't the time and the place for that. Times have changed. And different approaches needed. We can't expect the clock is going to stand still, because it doesn't. Anyone else? Yes?
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
So, my question is that, when we are discussing
Your question is a little louder?
When we are discussing Krishna's pastimes,
Yes.
we know that his Leela Shakti is operating.
We know that
His Leela Shakti is operating.
Yes.
And when we are dealing with devotees, how do we understand what they are doing?
How do we understand
what the devotees are doing?
what they're relishing?
What they are doing.
Who's they?
Devotees in general.
Devotees in Krishna's pastimes, or devotees over on this side?
Over on this side.
Okay.
So,
how do we understand what devotees in our association today are doing?
Yeah.
From reading Krishna's pastimes?
No. This is more of a practical question.
Is it more?
Practical question.
Practically present.
Practical question.
Practical question. You're asking a practical question.
Yes.
I'm sorry. I'm half deaf, and I'm straining to understand. Please don't be offended by my. It's not you. It's me.
Yes. How do we understand when we see devotees are behaving in a particular fashion? Because here, in this pastime, it seems that she is marrying her son. Right? Mayavati is marrying her son. Right?
So how do we understand what she's doing? Because she had that relationship, the relationship when she understood from Narada, this is the promise that Lord Shiva gave you. This is your husband. He's not just a little baby in the body of a fish. So it's her faith in the words of Lord Shiva and the words of Narada, then her conjugal affection of wife to a husband awakened. That's how it happened. But that's not what you're asking.
No. What I'm asking is when we see things like that now.
But those things don't happen now.
Because it's absolutely inappropriate, it's absolutely inappropriate that when we see things like this happening, like a parent having a relationship with the child or something, then we have to take corrective measures.
So, is the question that you're asking, if somebody, a deluded somebody, started thinking like Mayavati was thinking, there would be corrective measures for somebody like her?
Yes.
Yeah, but it's not going to happen. If there were, then there are corrective measures for sure. I don't know what laws, and it depends on where you are and all those kinds of things. But the government is there for corrective measures when people go bonkers, which is, socially inappropriate. However, the social inappropriate is getting the standards are getting lost. What's inappropriate today what's appropriate, what's acceptable today is shocking to a cultured person. But it's lawful. A lot of it, not everything, but a lot of it is lawful. So, what's behind this? What's bugging you? What is it you'd like to understand better? I'm not clear.
I'm
Are
trying
you clear?
to understand our role as devotees.
Our role as devotees.
When
we see stuff like this happening,
yes,
what should be our position?
yes,
That's your question.
yes.
Okay. I guess it depends on the circumstance, but if somebody's delusional, and we see it happening, and I guess it depends on the spiritual purity and shakti that goes with spiritual purity that you may have. What to do when something like that happens? I think I better understood what your question is. When Srila Prabhupada came to America, for example, he saw things that he never saw in India. And how did he take it? And what did he do about it? Which is kind of what your question is. He understood the persons who he was dealing with were deep, deep, deep in ignorance. And he wasn't uncertain about that. But what he didn't do so much was form judgmental opinions about people that are deep, 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 deep covered in ignorance. But he very kindly, compassionately tried to elevate them. Now, from time to time, he would remark, like I just heard it yesterday morning. Prabhupada was speaking about one student in Hawaii was challenging Prabhupada, what's wrong if we become a dog? And it's the only time I've heard Prabhupada say when that was spoken. A university student in Hawaii stood up and challenged him like that. But sometimes he would say, persons would say. So, in the moment, he wasn't dismissive of the person, but his point was just see how difficult it is because people are so deluded. He knew the audience was in a state of delusion, so that was just responsive to your question. And recognizing that delusion, then the method of cure of that delusion has to be quite simple and effective. So Prabhupada had faith in the holy name. And then would say, as he said in this lecture yesterday, they can come and take prasadam. Anyone from any background can come and chant and dance and take prasadam. And that's what we do. I don't know if there are persons, I would guess there are some persons that come to our temple and they have different delusions about life. Okay, and they're coming to our temple. So what do we do? Chant, dance, and take prasadam. And how quickly that's going to work? Well, it depends on the individual and the company they keep that reinforce that delusion. And as opposed to that, some companionship they may form with devotees. A person that comes to mind that was like very expert at this, in addition to Prabhupada, was Jayananda. And he would keep all kinds of people and just go and feed them, feed the bums, and just engage them in service, and they loved him. And by that affinity for him, they became less delusional. They became more purified. So sadhu sangha is another. Without recognizing what's what, but at the same time not being judgmental. It's just viewing what's what. If somebody's delusional. Yeah, it's okay to become a dog. What's wrong? Why do you have an issue with that? What does it mean to be, anyway, in that deluded condition? What are the implications of that? They're so covered they can't understand. Miserable. But is that okay? This is Kali Yuga. And the method, how we as devotees respond to its Kali Yuga, is the medicine for this age of Kali. As best we can. Where's the microphone? It's 8:33.
Very quickly, I asked Mataji a clarifying question. She said it's the devotees' behavior that she was asking.
If devotees have these delusional views,
Yes,
as
yes.
opposed to non-devotees, same thing. Doesn't matter who the audience is. Delusional view is a delusional view, and there's varieties of delusional views. Now, the boundary is if it's offensive to Vaishnavas and offensive to Guru and offensive to Krishna, then we draw some lines. Because that's like fire, and we don't allow fire in the house. So persons need to know there's some boundaries. Devotees need to know there's boundaries.
So we should consider other devotees to be delusional who are behaving that way?
Other devotees what?
To be delusional?
Are you asking, is it possible for devotees to be delusional? Yes.
Correct.
Of course. Of course. In different ways, delusional. Srila Prabhupada ki.
Yeah.